Her son kicked her out when he found out she'd lost her job, but he had no idea. She had a secret fortune. Martha didn't say a word when she closed the small wooden door behind her. The sound of the latch clicking felt louder than it should have. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the worn leather handle of her suitcase, not because she was cold, but because she was holding back the kind of tears that come only from betrayal. Her son Derek stood in the doorway with his arms crossed. His wife Tanya was behind him, silent but smug, like someone who had finally won an argument. Their home, once painted with warm blues and garden yellows, now felt cold. The shutters were closed even though the sun was still high. "You should have told us, Ma," Derek had said moments earlier. "You've been eating our food, sitting here all day doing nothing." Martha had blinked. "I've been resting. I'm not well. I didn't want to worry you." "Not well or not working?" Tanya jumped in. "We're struggling, Derek. We can't carry your mama too. It's not fair." Derek didn't argue with her. He didn't defend the woman who raised him alone after his father's death, who cleaned motel rooms and skipped meals to buy him textbooks. He just said, "It's time you figured out your own way. We've got kids to raise." And that was it. No hug, no thank you. Just the sound of her suitcase wheels dragging across cracked pavement as she walked away. Martha didn't cry. Not then. Not even when she reached the old bus bench 3 streets over and sat down, the weight of 72 years pressing into her spine. What her son didn't know was that she hadn't been fired. She had resigned. Her back had been giving out. The doctor warned her to stop lifting heavy boxes, and even though the church wanted her to stay, she quietly stepped away. She knew how to live with little. She had done it her whole life, but she never imagined that losing her part-time job would cost her everything else too. As she sat on the bench watching cars go by, she thought about the house she once owned, the one Derek now lived in. It had been hers once, paid off with decades of work. She had signed it over when he promised to take care of her forever. Forever had ended quickly, and yet she felt no bitterness because Martha had something her son didn't know, something she had protected in silence. 34 years ago, when Martha's husband passed away in a worksite accident, the insurance settlement was modest. But buried in the paperwork was a deed. Land deep in the countryside left to them by Womango 3, 20 an uncle neither had ever visited. The place had no water, no road, no value. Everyone told her to sell it. She didn't. Every year she scraped together just enough to pay the taxes on it. Even when she had nothing, she held on to it just in case. Last fall, someone came asking about it. A young man in a suit said a developer was buying up property for a new solar energy project, offered her a price that made her sit down. Martha asked for it to be kept private. The funds were wired to a trust managed by a church foundation in her late husband's name. Only she could access it. To everyone else, including her family, she was still just Mama Martha with her little apron and her empty purse. But inside her purse that morning, as she walked away from her son's house, was a checkbook and a bank card linked to $1.4 million. Martha spent the night at a women's shelter, not because she had to, but because she wanted to sit among people who understood what it meant to be overlooked. She shared her food. She 0440 listened. She smiled when others couldn't. The next day she visited a small property on the edge of town, a cottage with cracked walls, a leaking roof, and wild weeds swallowing the walkway. She paid cash. 3 weeks later it was restored quietly under the name Grace Holdings LLC. No one knew it was hers. No one asked. She moved in with peace in her heart and a plan in her mind. She didn't want revenge. She wanted to build something that wouldn't throw anyone away. 2 years passed. Derek's life changed, just not in the way he expected. The house he'd been so proud of, the one his mother had once paid off, had gone into foreclosure. He tried side hustles, warehouse jobs, and even quick fix schemes online. But between debt, a failing marriage, and poor decisions, everything slipped through his fingers. Tanya eventually left, taking their 2 sons with her, and the silence in the house was louder than any argument they'd ever had. That winter, Derek sat on the edge of a borrowed cot in a friend's basement, staring at a flyer he'd picked Onzo 2 up earlier that day from the public library. The print was crisp, elegant. The headline read, Martha's Table, Community, Meals, Shelter, and Support for Families in Need. He blinked at the name. Martha? It couldn't be, but something inside him stirred. A quiet shame mixed with curiosity and a kind of desperate hope. The next morning, he walked across town and found the building. It was beautiful in a humble way. Fresh paint, sunflowers planted near the doorway, a carved wooden sign above the entrance. Inside, the smell of baked bread and warm soup filled the air. Children laughed in the distance. Volunteers moved gracefully from room to room, and behind the reception desk, dressed in a soft beige cardigan, sat a familiar woman. She looked older, but not in a defeated way. Stronger, calmer, radiating something Derek hadn't seen in years. Peace. Mama, he whispered. Martha looked up, surprised at first, but not shaken. She stood slowly and walked around the desk, her eyes fixed on him. He dropped his Ronro 725 head. The words tumbled out clumsily. I lost the house. Tanya's gone. I have nothing. Mama, I didn't know where else to go. She let the silence breathe. Then she said gently, Come inside. You look cold. They sat across from each other at a small table. Derek looked around, still in awe. This place. It's yours. She nodded. I thought when you left, I thought you had nothing. I had peace, she said, and enough. Derek's hands gripped the mug she'd placed in front of him. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you say you had money? Martha looked at him carefully. Would it have changed anything? He didn't answer. She continued. I wanted to see who'd stay close when I had nothing to offer. That's how I know who to build for. I didn't want riches. I wanted to be useful. I was awful to you, he admitted. You trusted me, and I threw you out. Martha reached across the table and took his hand. You forgot yourself. That doesn't mean you can't find your way back. Tears fell, quiet ones. He didn't deserve her grace, but she gave it anyway. That spring, Derek started volunteering at Martha's table. He fixed broken furniture, helped prepare meals, and eventually earned a job coordinating supplies. But more than that, he rebuilt his bond with his mother. Every Friday, they sat together at sunset under the porch roof and watched the children play. One evening, Martha handed him a worn envelope. He opened it and found the original deed to the house she once gave him and the check from the land she had sold. Voided but framed. You don't owe me anything, she said. But now you know what happens when love comes before pride. He looked at her and for the first time in years truly saw her not as a parent or a caretaker or a burden, but as a woman who had built an empire of kindness from the ashes of rejection. Years later, when Martha passed peacefully in her sleep, her funeral drew hundreds. People from shelters, schools, food pantries, and churches came to honor her. No big headlines, no gold caskets, just stories. Stories of the woman who had nothing and gave everything. And Derek, he stood before them holding her favorite apron in his hands and said softly, My mother left this house once with a suitcase and a quiet heart. And in that silence, she built something greater than any of us ever knew. She didn't just feed people, she forgave them. Behind him, carved in wood above the main entrance, were the words she'd written when Martha's table opened. The doors that close behind you can't match the ones you open for others. And Derek, once lost in his own bitterness, had become the man she always believed he could be. All because the woman he cast out chose love over revenge. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more emotional, dramatic, and unexpected tales. And let us know in the comments where in the world are you watching from. We love hearing from all of you. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep watching.